Have you ever thought about what a master key for a digital fortress would look like? A single tiny flaw that gives an attacker complete control? Well, that's what a perfect 10 cyber threat is. And today, we're going to break down a real-world example that's happening as we speak. So that number, 10.0, what does that actually mean? Well, think of it like this. It's a perfect score in the worst possible way. This is the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS, and 10.0 is the absolute highest, most critical rating a vulnerability can get. It means an attacker can waltz in remotely, super easily, without you having to do a thing, no clicking a bad link, nothing. And once they're in, they have total control. So what does it take to create this kind of digital perfect storm? What are the ingredients? We're going to peel back the layers on this particular threat to see exactly what makes it tick. First up, let's look at the vulnerability itself. Okay, let's put a name to our villain here. It's CVE 2025-2393. Now, on the surface, it's a flaw in Cisco's email security software. But what makes it so incredibly dangerous is the timing. This is what we call a zero-day threat. And that name, well, it tells you everything you need to know about the race against time that defenders are currently losing. So, what's a 0 day? It's all about the timeline. It means that the good guys, in this case Cisco, had exactly 0 days to fix the problem before the attackers started exploiting it. The bad guys found it first. That gives them a massive head start to launch attacks while everyone else is scrambling to catch up. Okay, so who needs to be worried? This flaw is in Cisco's secure email gateway and their secure email and web manager. But, and this is really important, it's not just about owning the product. It all comes down to how it's configured. The attackers are laser-focused on systems where two things are true. The spam quarantine feature is turned on, and that quarantine interface is just sitting out there exposed to the open internet. It's a very specific and, unfortunately, a very deadly combination. All right, so we've covered the what. Now, let's talk about the who. Who's behind all this? Researchers have given them a temporary name, UAT 9686. And from what we can tell, all signs are pointing to a state-sponsored group with connections to China. You might be looking at that UAT and thinking, what on earth is that? Well, it's basically a placeholder. It stands for Unidentified Advanced Threat. It's the label researchers slap on a new cluster of activity when they know they're dealing with a sophisticated group, but they haven't quite pinned down exactly who it is yet. Think of it as a way to track a new player on the board while the investigation is still hot. So how do they make the jump to blaming a state-sponsored group? Well, researchers are attributing this to a China nexus group with what they call moderate confidence. Now, that might sound like a guess, but in the world of threat intel, it's anything but. It's based on hard evidence, the digital fingerprints the attackers leave behind. Their tools, their infrastructure, their tactics, they all look a lot like other known groups, specifically a big one called APT41. So when they say moderate confidence, it's their careful, professional way of saying, yeah, all the evidence is pointing in this direction. Okay, we know who's at risk and who's doing the attacking. Now for the fun part. What weapons are they using? Let's take a look inside their toolkit, which researchers have named AquaShell. You can really see their whole strategy just by looking at their tools. There are 4 main pieces. First, you've got AquaShell itself. That's the main backdoor, their command post on the inside. Then they use AquaTunnel and Chisel to dig these secret tunnels right through your defenses to get data out. And finally, and this part is just devious, they have AquaPurge. This is their cleanup crew. It goes in and methodically erases log files, basically wiping their fingerprints and hiding any trace they were ever there. So let's put all these pieces together. How does an attack actually go down, from start to finish? Let's walk through the attack chain step by step. It really breaks down into 5 classic stages. First up is initial access. This is where they exploit that public-facing app we talked about. They're in. Next is execution. They run their nasty Python commands as root, which, if you don't know, is the God mode for a system. They own it. Then comes persistence. They install that AquaShell backdoor so they can come back anytime they want, even if you reboot the machine. After that, it's defense evasion. This is where AquaPurge comes in to delete all the logs and cover their tracks. And finally, command and control. They use those hidden tunnels to phone home, send commands, and pull out data. It's a really methodical, complete takeover of the system. Okay, that was a lot of doom and gloom. We've seen the threat, the attacker, and how they operate. But now for the most important part. What do we do about it? Let's get into the mandatory defense plan straight from Cisco. And before we get into the steps, I really want you to listen to this quote from Cisco's security team. They say, if a compromise is confirmed, rebuilding the appliance is currently the only effective way to eliminate the persistence mechanisms. Let that sink in. They're not saying run a scan. They're saying the attackers bury themselves so deep into the system that the only way to get them out for good is to burn it all down and rebuild from scratch. That tells you everything about how serious this is. So let's say you're worried you might be a target. What do you do? Right now, Cisco has a clear 3-step emergency plan. First, restrict access. Immediately, lock down that management interface, cut it off from the world. The idea is to stop the bleeding. Second, contact support. Don't try to solve this on your own. Call Cisco's support team, the TAC. They have the expertise to figure out if you've actually been hit. And then step 3, and this is the big one. If they confirm you've been compromised, you have to rebuild. Yep, the whole thing. Wipe it clean and start over. It's the only way to be absolutely certain they're gone. And of course, how do we stop this from ever happening again? It really all comes down to basic security hygiene, the stuff we should all be doing anyway. Think of your network like a castle. You absolutely need a firewall. That's your moat and your high walls. You need to separate your sensitive management interfaces from your public-facing stuff. That's common sense, right? You don't put the king's chambers right by the front gate. You also need to lock all the doors and windows you're not using, so disable services you don't need. Keep an eye on your logs, that's your guards on the wall, looking for anything weird. And of course, keep everything patched and use strong passwords. The crazy thing is, this attack wasn't a brilliant new way to get through the castle walls. It was just a case of finding a front door that was left wide open. And really, that brings us to the biggest takeaway from this whole thing. This perfect 10 wasn't about some unbreakable, super advanced exploit. It was about a simple configuration mistake. It's a classic case of having a really strong lock, but forgetting to actually lock the door. You know, we spend a fortune on the latest and greatest security tools, but so often the real danger isn't some super genius hacker. It's a simple, tiny detail we overlooked in our own setup. So it really leaves you with a critical question to ask yourself. It's not just, are my security tools strong? It's what tiny blind spot in my configuration could be the front door for the next perfect 10?